7-inch sailors in satin shirts, they whisper in the air. Some storefront incarnation of...
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Setlisting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and who are you? And why do you love Bruce? We're going to answer both questions because my guest today is Ethan I. Fisher. He is a huge Who fan. He is a huge Springsteen fan and a fellow podcaster. Ethan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be asked.
Yeah. So, you do a show on YouTube called The Fisher Protocol, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear all about that. But we always start at well, first off, tell us a little about yourself.
My name is Ethan. I love The Who. The podcast started as something as a way to kind of give my wife a break during the pandemic. She's been married for a very long time, and she's kind of sick of hearing about The Who. So, yeah, that's how that goes.
Ethan, I would be a very rich man if I every time a guest, I got $1 when they said, yeah, I'm just so glad to talk to someone else because my wife is tired of talking Bruce, you know?
Well, and that's the thing, like, you know, I'm sure it was there. It was definitely there when we met, but it's only got the love and the obsession has only gotten bigger. And with the internet and when you can connect with people, because there's not anyone down the street that likes The Who or Bruce Springsteen as much as I do. So with the invention of the internet, you know, you can find these people now. So
yeah. And the other thing, I've I'll often go to my wife, hey, do you want to hear a story? And she goes, is it about Bruce? Never mind.
And I'll just tell my wife, and I'll keep it to one factoid. You know what I mean? I'll keep it to one thing. If I go to two, I'll be like, okay, you're bored. You know, I got my son's middle name to be Townsend. That's the biggest win for me.
That is a pretty big win.
Yeah.
The other thing, we have a code. I can't remember which comedian, but some comedian said, oh yeah, I heard about that. It was on the cover of Who Gives an F magazine.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
so I now, I will go to my wife. Hey, you know what I was reading on Who Gives a Damn magazine or Who Gives an F magazine?
Right.
And that's her clue. I'm about to tell you a story that you probably don't care about, but I, as being married over 35 years, have the need to tell you.
Right.
And so she listens and then she goes, no, that wasn't on the cover. That was actually an interesting story. I'm glad I shared that. Or other times she'll go, what am I supposed to do with that? You know, so.
Or a good one would be that. Yeah, that not only was that in this magazine, but it was buried on page 36 in the corner.
Oh, I like that. I like that line a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
So I always like to start at the beginning, Ethan. Where did you grow up and what kind of music did your family listen to growing up?
Well, I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. in Prince George's County. So the Capitol Center was our big home of the 78 Mega Bruce show. The Capitol Center in Largo, Maryland was where we saw most of the shows growing up. A lot of Beatles coming out of the parents, a lot of mixtapes that had some ABBA on it, had a lot of early 60s British, your doo-wah ditties, Wild Thing, Have I the Right, Needles and Pins, Ferry Across the Mersey, you know, and a lot of Beatles things up until Sgt. Pepper. And apparently, according to my parents, the Beatles ended at Sgt. Pepper and there wasn't anything after that. So thank God for Brothers for that one. And most importantly, my dad had this record of the 1973 London Symphony recording of Tommy.
Yeah.
Because he really liked the Rod Stewart version of Pinball Wizard. And that was in our collection as well.
Ah, okay. So I take it did you go through a phase where you rebelled against your parents' music, or have you always just accepted, hey, that's pretty cool. I like listening to this.
I have always been 10 to 20 years behind my age group as far as music goes.
Okay.
So I've only recently started discovering things like Tool or, big 90s things, like when I was going to high school, because I was so immersed in high school in my who-ness. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
against my parents' music, I never rebelled against it. I always loved it.
Okay.
I was always driven to guitar-based music. So
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned the symphonic Tommy. So that you've kind of given your answer, but let's kick it. When did you first experience The Who? It sounds like that album, but what about their music spoke to you? And then my part 2 is going to be that same question for Bruce Springsteen, because you have said, hey, Jesse, if it's okay with you, I want to do a double dipper. I want to talk about both in the episode.
Well, that was the very kernel. We had the album of the 73 Tommy.
Yeah.
And I would always look at the pictures and I was kind of taken in by the story of Tommy, but I never really listened to it.
Okay.
But then in 1989, that the Who did on Fox TV, they had a special from the 1989 tour where they did Tommy the first half, and then the second half they did Who's Greatest Hits. And that video is the reason. That's my entry point to the Who. I got it like that year on VHS, for however much VHSs were.
Yeah.
At that point, and I wore that thing down. It was the Tommy stuff was good, but it was also like when they came back from commercial break, Pete Townsend had this Rickenbacker one and they launched into Substitute. And just that video in general really got me hooked at 10 years old.
Yeah.
And so I started looking for the studio versions of the recordings that were on the special. And then I got the Who's Greatest Hits, the Union Jack button-up shirt album. And, I wore that down to pieces, and then Who's Better, Who's Best. And, it kind of snowballed there from there. And it, kind of never let up.
That's interesting. And can you articulate why? Was it the music? It was the words? What's going on?
Well, ever since I saw Eric Clapton's 24 Nights, I was, ensorcelled? I don't know, by the guitar, just in general. And then when, I'm not really sure. First of all, was the musicians. A lot of it had to do with watching Simon Phillips on that special.
Yeah.
And just, Roger Daltrey breaking the tambourines in like the first 2 seconds of the overture. I don't know what it was. And I don't think it was necessarily Pete yet, because he was doing that. He was doing the acoustic thing on there, right? At that time. So when I finally started to look into the history and I heard the noise and I heard the thunder they brought, it all changed there. But it's very much as I grew into my teens, they spoke to this angry young man thing that I assume we all get at some point. An angry young woman thing too. And I kind of held on. And when I saw what Pete Townsend was about and the way he wrote for his audience and the way his writing for his audience matured as I did, as I got older, when I turned 16 and I heard that the Who were going to get back together again, because I assumed they just never were. Biggest joke in rock and roll music, right? Like the Who is not getting back together again. And I got a chance to see them in Quadrophenia. That's when I introduced myself to Quadrophenia. And when a person that loves the Who finds Quadrophenia at 15 or 16, I mean, this man jumped inside my head and wrote what I was feeling and what I was thinking. So, I mean, and that just continued on. And as I got older, his solo work also spoke to me. And now if you listen to something that Pete Townsend did lately, or not lately, but later, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, which we just reviewed on our show, or anything, that speaks to me at the age I am now. So that's why Pete Townsend, that's why the Who. You're muted.
Of course I am, as I try to be a polite guest, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's flip around and let's talk about Bruce.
Okay.
So when did you first discover Bruce, and what about him spoke to you?
Well, when it was when the big box set came out, the big live E Street Band box set came out, I remember dancing with that with babysitters.
Okay.
For sure. I remember having a chance to see him when the E Street Band were off, but I didn't get to go to that concert. And so I held that chip on my shoulder because my family got to go.
Okay.
And I finally got to go see the 1999 tour
Okay.
in Washington, D.C. And I have a bootleg of it if we're allowed to talk about those somewhere.
Sure.
And I remember he wore a blue shirt. And, you know, that in 1999 live in New York City, that just, I don't know. It was the sound. It was the three guitars. It was, you know, I remember listening to that album so much. And as much as I love The Who, I haven't played along with my guitar to any album more than I've played to Bruce Springsteen live in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's a lot. And my wife has heard Prove It All Night way more times than she ever wants to hear it in her entire life. And I was enamored by that song so much. I became a Prove It All Night connoisseur. Every time I was going to the show, all I want to hear is Prove It All Night. One time I went to see him at, and I don't remember, it might've been 2016.
Yeah.
Whatever year they brought back the 78 intro.
Yeah.
And he opened with it at Nationals Park in DC.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can go. I mean, you know, of course I stayed and I wanted to stay, but in my mind, I'm like, I could leave now and be okay.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm a Prove It All Night chaser. But it's that guitar sound. It's the fact that, you know, he does the same thing Pete does, except for the American blue collar person of a certain generation. Yeah. Right. And just that band, you know what I mean? I'm a lover of guitars. I'm a lover of guitar nerd stuff. Noel Lofgren is big with guitar nerd stuff. I mean, the band is so powerful. And just to go back to that album again, I can't not point out that how much that Lost in the Flood means to me from that live in New York City concert.
Why that song?
His body hit the street with such a beautiful thud. And the drum roll after that, and the way the band sounds and the tightness of the band. The Who, they're not tight, but that's what we love about The Who, right? The Who is sloppy. The Who, their big thing is there's microphones in the air while they're supposed to be in front of your mouth. There's windmilling arms when the you know, the mistakes happen with The Who. There's nothing more perfect than that Lost in the Flood to me musically. It's tightness as a band. I just love it.
Ethan, I've never had anyone bring that up before, but that's a really good point. Is it does, I've had a guy on the podcast who told the story that the first time he saw Bruce was in Germany, and it was one of the early tours, and might have been an early river tour. I can't remember for sure. It doesn't matter, but it's a great story. He talks about for circumstances that are amazing, he gets in the sound check. And so he sits there and he said, it must have been the river, because he said he'd heard the beginning of Hungry Heart more times that day than he ever could imagine, because he watched Bruce go from one part of the stadium, you know, the arena, to another, and the band's on stage kicking it off Hungry Heart. Okay, that's enough. And then he would move. And I just, I've also been told people that nothing happens on stage when the E Street Band is playing that Bruce is not totally aware of and is okay with. I hate to use the word sanctioned, right? But you're right. I mean, they are, we had a couple of guys that were doing a podcast for a while, and they jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, said, I just think the E Street Band should be just a cover band. I just think they should tour and do nothing but cover songs. They would be the greatest cover band in the world.
I so disagree with that.
Okay.
Like, simply because the covers aren't my 100% favorite part. I was at the the Redskins Stadium, Washington, Raljohn Stadium, whatever it was called back then, for the day Johnny Cash passed away, and he opened with "Walk the Line," right? And so every time there's a cover that seems to be very meaningful to where he is, say it's "Staying Alive" or "Highway to Hell," I really like those. They're not 100% my favorite part of the show when they do that thing in the middle with the signs.
Yeah.
I just want to say before I get back to that history with that, I guess I'll come back with the how many times have you seen them kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the covers, they're a cover band for Bruce Springsteen songs, if that makes sense.
No, I get that. And that's, and I understand why you're saying that. And I guess my point was not necessarily the covers as the tightness of the band. How well they play. And how way they play together. And
unparalleled.
And it is amazing. Like, as we're recording this, it's toward the end of February, and a few weeks ago, Ted Nugent, had bad things to say about Bruce, but even as he was criticizing him, he had to praise the E Street Band, right? Like he criticized Bruce because his band was so good that, they carried him, which we will leave, Mr. Nugent to his opinion and move on. But I do think it is amazing when you're in the pit or you're in the stands and you're in your seat and you just watch them make magic. And
it is amazing. And when they finally started coming back to Baltimore, and I've seen them twice since then.
Yeah.
And I think I might have saw the next or second to last full version of Born to Run that Clarence played on. I think it's Baltimore. We could do the research on that.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. It's just amazing. And it's those things I live for, those 2 hours when that band is on stage. And it's, for me, it's The Who and it's Bruce Springsteen. I get that from.
Yeah, my two big obsessions are Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, and Bruce and E Street Band. I know there is a connection with the Beach Boys and the Who. I had a friend who was a huge Who fan and talked about Keith Moon and his love of surf music, which I always thought was very cool. That this you would not think there would be this cross set of fandom, but it was.
It's the best part of the Kids All Right movie, right? Is the Who playing Barbara Ann. I wish there was more footage of that, with Keith singing. So yeah.
Yeah, great. That's great. And I believe the History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs is a podcast that I love, and I think he covered the Who and some of their early in one of the episodes and talking about how it got expensive them destroying guitars. So we may have to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So all right, we'll do another duo question. How many times have you seen the Who? Do you count? And how many times have you seen Bruce and the band or in solo tours? And do you count?
Well, no, with Bruce I don't count. I can tell you that since that 1999 DC show, any DC Baltimore appearance Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band have made, I've been there.
Okay.
And I have been more than a few of Philly shows. And I definitely went to that the third night of that 5-night stand at, I guess it's Giant Stadium or whatever.
MetLife. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, what it was. Yeah, Meadowlands.
What it was.
Whatever. Yeah.
And of course, I bought it for the last night, and then they added 2 nights, so I wasn't in the last night. I was in the middle, but I heard Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen in New Jersey. I mean, it was an amazing experience.
I went at the last, the kind of final on the river tour, and I ended up, my lovely bride helped, blessed my son and I flying into New York, and we went to the second of three MetLife. It was kind of they had gone to the America, they'd gone to Europe, they'd come back on the river tour, and so they were performing there. It was the second night. He opened with Incident with Strings, and if at the end of the episode, end of the concert, they were hitting close to 4 hours. They did Jersey Girl. The couple got engaged, got on stage. You could see it on YouTube. And they played Fireworks during the end of Jersey Girl. And I went, I've had enough. This is the first show where I'm like, one more, Bruce, one more. I was like, I have gone to the all-you-can-eat buffet. If I have one more bite, I'm going to be sick. I was sated. And then, of course, the next day I was like, damn, I'm ready to see him again. But for that one moment, I was like, this was greatness.
My favorite moment, and I'll get to the Who thing, my favorite Bruce moment that I remember was being at that Philadelphia Stadium, New Philadelphia Stadium, before the Eagles even played. He was doing rising shows there. And me and my friends drove, and we were in the very highest reaches, all far away. But this man worked out, and you can find online the going down for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
He worked it out right on stage, and they did it for the first time in 20 years. I'm going down, and I lost my mind. He did the same thing with Pink Cadillac like the next week in DC, but that was just great.
Yeah, my moment for that, and a couple of things. I was at the Nashville show where they did a double. They did Burning Love into I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And my friend, when I got back to work, said because somebody's daughter had the Stones song request, and my buddy Eddie said, no way your kid is going to a Bruce show with a sign asking for something that isn't from the E Street Band. He says, I could just see you as a father. Nope. Shh, we're not doing this. So I assume the parents must have that same Rolling Stones, Springsteen kind of connection like you do with the Who and Bruce. But I enjoy whatever they play. I am not a snob, whatever they play. But I do every once in a while think about, if it's a cover, what am I missing? Like, would I have gotten Daniel's Den? Or would I've got This Is Your Sword? Or, the one cover I'm chasing because I'm from Louisiana is Jolie Blanc. I just love that song. And I love that when you talked about he was in Australia and it was a sign request, and right there on stage, they figure out, okay, how we're going to do this. So I don't mind the covers, but I do every once in a while, like, it's okay, Bruce, let's grab something from let's do a cover of a song you haven't done.
I don't know if I've seen it on YouTube or I was there, depending on what the city they were in, but the day I don't remember, like the day after Glenn Fry died, you just take it easy. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I did too. I was the night he opened the tour in Pittsburgh. David Bowie had died, and he opened, on the encore, he did the Bowie song. And then I knew Broadway was going to be different when Tom Petty died. And then it was, I think it was the official opening of Bruce on Broadway, Springsteen on Broadway. And he didn't do a Petty song. And I went, oh, this is going to be different. This isn't a regular concert, because if it had been a regular concert, a Petty song would have made it in there.
Yeah. And I think for the Broadway thing, they gave him strict Broadway rules that you have to follow if you want to be considered a Broadway show. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just concerts at a Broadway theater.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
And he wanted it to be a Broadway show.
I will tell you, he does this so well that when Merle Haggard died, which was in my father's top 3 musicians that he loved, I was a little sad he didn't do a Haggard song. And I was like, that's unrealistic, Jesse. I mean, you can't expect Bruce to do, when he's touring, anytime someone dies, like, okay, man, let's figure out a song. But I was a little disappointed I
Right.
didn't get Mama Tried or,
Right.
something from that.
Right on.
So we'll get back to other questions, but you reminded me, I was in Houston, and Matthew Akon, who has been on the show, had a sign request for One Step Up. And he had mentioned that had not been played by the full E Street Band since like the late 80s.
Yeah.
And that's also on YouTube, where he gets it. And Bruce says, "You have made your bed, sir. We do not know this song." And he plays it, and you hear him, "Band, come in softly." And that was one of my, just to see, I love Tunnel of Love. It's a great album. And to hear him do something like that off the spur of the moment was pretty special.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those special one-offs are really great.
Yeah. All right. So talk about Who. So,
All right. Yeah.
And before you answered, I missed I always make this statement so if you are listening to the show because you love Ethan, I always preface when I ask about seeing someone live is, I don't think the amount of times you've seen someone perform live is a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. There are people that live on the East Coast that have the opportunity, they found Bruce in the middle 70s, and they have gone to upwards of hundreds of shows. There are people that only found Bruce, a couple of years ago, and they've never had a chance to see him, and they could be just as big a fan. So I always like to throw that out there. But the Who.
Well, before you say something, this is kind of a thing that's close to my heart, because recently in 2010, I became a massive fan of the band Florence and the Machine. Okay. And you get inside that fan base, and the people in that fan base do not look like you and me. They are much younger.
Yeah.
They are generally female.
Yeah.
And that's their person. But I got involved in the fandom a little bit online, and you see this thing come out where it's like, if you don't see them live, you can't be a real fan. That's absolute utter BS.
Yes.
Like, if it's you and the CD and your feelings in your room, you're just as big a fan as me. I'm just really lucky. I'm just really lucky and fortunate that I get to go to these shows. So in no way does it make you a bigger fan or a lesser fan, the amount of shows you see. Music is between you and the maker. Right?
That is beautiful. And I don't say that lightly. I actually am tearing up a little bit because it's true. And this is across all fandom, every once in a while there's this snobbery, like, well, if Born in the USA, if Born in the USA is your favorite CD, obviously you're not a real fan. F you. You know what?
Listen, I was working in Northern Virginia when I was 19, and or 20, and I was in the height of my Bruce Renaissance or whatever. And these people, and I worked at a bicycle store, and these people came in, and he had a Bruce Springsteen shirt. I started talking about it, and the lady was just like, "Oh, we go to all the shows." "Oh yeah, well, I went to this one, and this one was really good." "Oh yeah, we went to that one." "Oh yeah, no, we go to all."
Yeah.
I've never been so annoyed at someone's deterioration of what music should be and what fandom should be.
So for April Fool's last year, I got a stand-up comedian who had been on my podcast and who was not a massive Springsteen fan. And he played obnoxious Springsteen guy. And we did the episode of like, yeah, oh, if you can count how many shows you go on, doesn't count. You aren't a real fan,
Yeah.
And he played it to the max. And then we ended the episode, and I said, "Hey, April Fools," and then we talked to the guy, and because I know those fans that, and I have love in my heart for them because they know I'm sure their love is real, to quote Bruce, right? But it is kind of, I had two I have two younger fans that are both in their, like, one of them isn't even 21 yet. And the other one just turned like 23. And they had never seen Bruce, but they were massive fans, and they both got to go to Broadway this last time, and that was their first chance to see him, and they were so thrilled. But I mean, I would put their fandom against anyone, you know?
Oh yeah, and the only reason why I mentioned the Florence and the Machine fans is because
Yeah.
so many of them are so much younger, and they don't have the opportunity, and they start feeling bad and say, you know, my life, it's not worth it unless I can see her. And I'm like, you'll go.
Yeah, you'll get your chance.
You'll get your chance, and it'll be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the Who.
All right, so the Who.
I warned you we may go off on tangents, and I love
them. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so I will make a full effort to talk about the Who for a while. Okay. I have seen the Who perform live 25 to 30 times since 1996.
Okay.
Quadrophenia. Okay, so 1989, I first saw them. 1995, I think they did, or six, they did the Hyde Park show of Quadrophenia with Roger Daltrey and the Eye Patch, right?
Okay.
And David Gilmour, and that was still the big band, of course. And then through someone, I heard that they were going to be at Madison Square Garden doing Quadrophenia for however many nights, with Phil Daniels live from the Quadrophenia movie doing the narration, right? Ooh. And that show is one of those shows is definitely online. It was a King Biscuit Flower Hour live radio thing. And my grandmother, God bless her, God rest her soul, she wanted to go see Jackie Mason on Broadway. We're a Jewish family.
Yeah.
So I took this trip that I always take. I took a million times since then. We grabbed the Northeast Express, the Amtrak. We go up to Pennsylvania Station. We go across the street to the Pennsylvania Inn. We check in. I go right across the street to Madison Square Garden. And there I am. It's the stuff of rock and roll dreams. I'm seeing Pete Townsend. I'm seeing Roger Daltrey. I'm seeing John Entwistle. I'm seeing the band do Quadrophenia at Madison Square Garden when I was 16 years old. I could not believe it. I lost my mind. I listened to the Quadrophenia, and then they came out and they did Behind Blue Eyes and Substitute, and I've never been so happy. And so since then, that's the one thing I try to get back. I try to keep going to Who shows. And I've purchased two shows this year for the tour they just announced.
You're always trying to get that high again, chasing that high again, right?
Well, yeah, I'm chasing it, but it's also one of those things where it's not like Bruce. It's a different thing because, you know, Who set lists, the love and death, they don't change. You know what I mean? And, you know, they have a certain slots they need to fill for people. They're the CSI band, right?
Yeah.
So you're always going to hear, who are you? Behind Blue Eyes, Bobby O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again, no matter what. And those are fine. Those are great. But lately they've been throwing us a couple deep cuts. And the biggest, second biggest moment was when I was 40, for my 40th birthday a couple years ago. I got to take my then 7-year-old son.
Oh, nice.
And I took him to see the Who. And that was, I always say it again, greatest moment.
Yeah.
You know, because he loves Tommy. And so he got to hear like 7 songs or 5 songs from Tommy up front, including the overture. And then it started to rain and snow a little bit, and we were in the outside amphitheater. So I took off almost all my clothes. I sheltered him because I know they're doing Bobby O'Reilly at the end. And I know it's with a violinist, and I know that's his song.
Yeah.
So I'm making bad parenting decisions left and right. I'm like,
or genius parent decisions.
When you're like, listen, you need to eat this ice cream because you need the sugar because you need to stay awake. That's not a good parenting decision. I'm not proud of it. Right. But you know, he's 7. He's not really going to be into listening to a very long instrumental piece like The Rock from Quadrophenia before Love Reign Over Me. He's not going to like be really, or they were doing Imagine a Man from the Who by Numbers. He's not going to really be into that stuff. I got to keep him going. So when we get to the end, and I have a video of it, and when Bobby O'Reilly starts, it's just as magical as I thought it would be in my mind. It's amazing.
So it sounds like you're raising your son correctly, even though if you are force feeding him ice cream. I will still I as a dad who took Chris to shows, there's a local band called Brave Combo that does rock and roll polkas.
Yeah.
We used to go see them a lot. We went to see Sarah Hickman perform a lot. And so I say good, Ethan. You're a good father.
And if all goes according to plan, he'll be seeing Paul McCartney in June, and we're definitely going to see the Who together in May. So, and I'm taking him to see New Order in September.
Oh, very good.
Very excited. Yeah.
Cool. And there'll be a phase, right, where he'll bring music to you and he'll say, "Hey, Dad, listen to this band," and
Well,
that's going to be really cool.
He's trying to get me into Imagine Dragons, and that's not really taking, but you know.
That's good. So on road trips, do y'all take turns on who picks the songs?
I try to let him get in a few.
Yes,
you know,
I understand. Yes,
but we have Who concerts to prepare for. He needs to know some things.
Exactly. There we go. Talk to me. Are there? You've shared so many, but are there albums or songs for either artist that really mean a lot to you? You talk about Prove It All Night. You're a chaser that I guess if you had to rank would be your number one Springsteen song.
Yeah, by far, that, like in Murder Incorporated probably, and you know, just whatever's on live in New York City, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. And Because the Night and all that stuff. But with the Who, it's kind of more complicated because as a Who deep diver, you know what I mean? Like you have to look past the first disc of a greatest hits.
Yeah.
Sometimes into the second disc of the greatest hits or to the third disc of the greatest hits you would make.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, all of Quadrophenia is my favorite Who album.
Okay.
You know, the two odds and sods tracks that are Pure and Easy and Naked Eye are two of my top favorite Who songs. I always say Naked Eye is my top favorite Who song of all time.
Okay.
But that changes on a daily basis, right? As fans, we know that some days it's going to be Slip Kid on the Who by Numbers or the live version of Dreamin' from the Waist by Who by Numbers. And, you know, I was born in 1979, a year after Keith Moon passed away.
Okay.
So I can never be a Who purist. The internet is full of Who purists that, you know, you quit the day after Keith Moon dies and you never go back. And, you know, there's a whole group of fans that got into them with the Kenny Jones era. And sometimes we're a little bit at odds because I don't really enjoy those albums very much.
Okay.
But Endless Wire, which came out in 2006, and I don't know if you've heard that at all. That's the first new Who recording that came out since I was a fan.
Wow.
And I love that record. It's got like two or three of the best Who songs in my mind, Mike Post's Theme and Black Widow's Eyes. They're on par with anything Townsend has done. And there are people out there right now that will fight me for saying that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they really don't like those. And I just love them. I love all that stuff. I like Marty Robbins, their last album, Who, which came out like 2 years ago. I need to get into that one a little bit more. It has a couple good songs. People seem to really like it more than Endless Wire. But we talk a lot on my show about entry points, and we should be sensitive to entry points. So because when the Who did that big Kenny Jones stretch up until their farewell, they got a lot of new fans at that time. And so that's a lot of people's who are talking about the Who now. That's their main Who stuff. And they love, you know, Daily Records or It's Hard or Cook's County. And, you know, there are a few songs from that era I like, but it's not a lot. It's not what speaks to me.
So Ethan, I talk a lot about that Born in USA is a gateway drug to Springsteen fandom to a lot of people. And so and as I've already talked about, I get upset with people who are elitist, that an album that had 7 top 10 hits is kind of dismissed, like, oh, you know, Darkness on the Edge of Town or Get the Fuck Out. you know. And I think, like, for me, Devils and Dust has a special place in my heart because I didn't see Bruce live till 2002 during the Rising.
Sure.
And I had listened to the Rising, but I'd kind of casually listened to it, right?
Mhm.
And so when I went to this show, there were tons of songs I really didn't know. And then when Devils and Dust came out, that was the first CD that'd come out since I'd seen him live, where
Right.
I'd made that switch, where I was a casual fan to, oh my God, this guy is a rock and roll, God, small G.
Right.
And so I listened to Devils and Dust over and over again, over and over again. That was the only CD that was playing in my car, and I just played it over and over again. So when I saw him in concert, it was just him. I was thrilled hearing every one of those songs. So intellectually, I realized Devils and Dust is, I'd give it, if I'm ranking CDs, it's in the middle, maybe the lower third of other things he's done. Not that that's a bad thing. We have to grade on a curve. But because of the emotional and historical significance to me personally, I always have nice things to say about that.
Right. I say Quadrophenia, right?
Yeah.
And there's a little Who fan in the back of my brain that's punching me as I'm saying that, saying you're not talking about Who's Next at all. Right. And you can't argue that it's the biggest and what people consider the best Who album.
Right.
And what is best and what is my favorite are two different things. Okay. So if you're putting one album in the time capsule for ancient aliens to discover in 2 million years, you're putting in Who's Next.
Right.
Right. You're putting in probably Born to Run. Right.
Right.
But I love Magic. I don't know why
Yeah.
I love Magic. I love Magic. I love every song on Magic. It hit me in a weird way. I don't know what it was, but I could give or take Working on a Dream.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest Working on a Dream fan either. Half of High Hopes I love. The other half I went, Magic, I agree. I was able to see Girls in Their Summer Clothes once. Loved it. And
did you buy that single, that Girls in Their Summer Clothes single that was on? I love
yes,
that.
they did.
I love that with the different. It's great. It's great.
And then, I'll Work for Your Love is one of my songs that's on my wish list. I'd be like, oh, I know the chances of them doing I'll Work for Your Love are minuscule, but I would lose my crap if they started playing that.
And I hope people are following us. I know we're ping ponging between the two bands, but I can do this with these two.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? So also I wanted to mention the album Who Are You?
Yeah.
One of my favorite all-time songs is a song 905 on that, which is a John Entwistle Penn song.
Okay.
And we're doing a lot of John Entwistle like Penn album reviews on my channel right now. On Who Are You, like the song Sister Disco and Music Must Change. Those are also amazing, like my big go-to songs. And for early Who, Pictures of Lily, of course. A Quick One While He's Away, of course, and Early Morning Cold Taxi. I just wanted to mention those Who songs.
No, I'm glad you did. All right, so talk about the Fisher Protocol, Ethan. Talk to me about, you've already said one of the driving forces was your lovely bride telling you, please find another outlet for Who Talk. So talk to me a little bit more about the YouTube, or, quote unquote, I basically it's a video podcast, right? So let's talk about what kind of the origins, and then give me a little bit of what you guys are doing on the podcast.
Okay, so I don't know if you were in the TV, you watch Lost or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever hear the podcast Jay and Jack? And they did Lost. Okay. So I became part of that community, and after I started interacting with those hosts, and I started to become a regular contributor through letters when they started doing Westworld. And then Jack, who is a great guy, would call me on occasionally to do, when he does Lost rewatches, to come on and talk about episodes. And right around last year, we started to completely watch a show called The Leftovers, which is my favorite show, and we talked about it every week.
Amazing show. I could have you come on and we could just do a whole show on that. I think that's well done.
I've covered The Leftovers in full twice. But Jack,
okay,
he put this thing together on Crazy Hank TV, and you can go see us talk about The Leftovers every week for almost a year.
Ah, okay.
So when I heard that, I was like, my last name's Fisher. That's what it'll be about. And actually, the first episode of my podcast was actually about a Florence and the Machine record, not a Who record. I was not comfortable speaking so much about Florence and the Machine after I did the tough analysis, because a lot of her, as much as I am drawn to her as a personality and as a singer, I can't articulate what she's talking about. Okay. But I could do that with the Who. So I got my friend Tom, who I met almost 20 years ago now when I was working at a guitar store. He came on, and then we just said, do you want to come on and I want to start something, and we'll talk about Quadrophenia, and we'll go song by song. And that first Quadrophenia show was like an hour and a half. We didn't know what people want on YouTube. We didn't know how detailed we wanted to get. And then I asked Scott Smith, who ran the very first Who web ring back in the 90s, if he wanted to come on. And then we just started doing album reviews. So it's just Who album reviews, but then little things pop up in the news. Sometimes we talk about it. They're not my favorite. Like if an artist like Phoebe Bridgers goes on Saturday Night Live with a skeleton sweatshirt and smashes a guitar, I see that as a heavy Who influence.
Yes.
Our highest rated, almost 2,000 views video is with the author of a Who concert file book called The Who Concert File. And his name is Joe McMichael. And he is a fan who, do you know who Irish Jack is?
No.
Any chance? Irish Jack is the original mod that Keith Townsend based Jimmy from Quadrophenia off of.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Joe McMichael wrote, and Irish Jack wrote the Who Concert File, which is a catalog up until the mid 90s of every Who show, every set list, whatever. And he came on, and that was a huge thing for us. And we got letters from Irish Jack telling us how much, he was happy to contribute and help. And so that was really, really nice. There's the reason why I started this was really I have a permanent Stone Zeppelin chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
I like those bands. Be very clear. I like those bands. But as a Who fan, I am constantly disappointed with their ranking amongst people with those bands. I don't know why. They're bigger fandoms. They're more ferocious fandoms. But I think the Who is by far and away a better band. I think the songs mean more. And this is just a personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I do have a constant chip on my shoulder about it. Because my brother's a Rolling Stones fan.
There you go.
And I'm like, okay, but it's only rock and roll why I like it. That's great. But Pete Townsend is exploring the mysteries of my brain in his lyrics. You know what I mean? He's not talking about Gollum or walking through Mordor or, it's only rock and roll and I like it.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. I get that.
No, I was going to say the only reason why I mentioned the Rolling Stones thing is because I did one video where it's the Who versus the Rolling Stones. And I only did that because I felt like I could talk adequately about the Rolling Stones and what I thought the differences were. I don't feel that way about Led Zeppelin, so I'm not going to make that video. I'm not confident talking about Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
We did a top 10 best Who covers and top 10 worst Who covers.
Yeah.
And our biggest video by far is top 10 worst Who covers.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Weird. So the Who versus the Rolling Stones and the top 10 worst Who covers.
Okay.
People really enjoy the negative shows, and it's kind of disheartening sometimes.
It is a little disheartening. Yes.
It's a little disheartening. But I just want to say we really do try to keep it to music because I'm not interested in hijinks.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in hotel room destroying.
Where do you rank the Who in Super Bowl halftimes?
This also got me into trouble.
Okay. If I need to skip it, I can.
No, you don't. No, you don't need to skip it at all. 2 years ago, everyone was talking about the Super Bowl. So since I talk about the Who, I felt the need to say, it's not my favorite. And you have to understand, a lot of it goes back to that concert for New York.
Yeah.
Okay. the concert for New York 9/11. The Who came in and proved to the world that they were the Who, right? This is like the best, almost post Keith Moon Who has ever been.
Okay.
You watch that performance, it's mind-changing. The next day, people are looking at you differently because you've been talking about the Who forever, and they did this thing, right?
Mhm.
The Super Bowl, biggest stage in the world, and it's the same thing. It was just the opposite feeling. I don't think it was great. It's not my favorite performance of theirs.
Yeah. Being a Springsteen fan, of course, I loved seeing Bruce perform, and but I always, when everyone says, even the Springsteen fans, oh, you're forgetting the greatest halftime show, and I always go, well, Prince or U2 may have something to say about that, because U2, after 9/11, that it was the first time they just put a band on stage and let them perform, the power of that, and then freaking Prince is playing Purple Rain in the Rain. I mean, it just,
it doesn't, and that's one of those things where it's like, you can't plan for that. They didn't plan for rain.
Yeah.
And I just watched that recently because of everyone was talking, and him behind that purple thing playing the guitar, that's his symbol.
Yeah.
That's a moment you can't manufacture.
Yeah. In fact, if you put it in a movie, you'd say, oh, this is so cheesy. Oh, come on, people.
The only thing I didn't like about the halftime show with Bruce was the hawking of the Working on a Dream.
Yeah.
But I understand that's what it's for, and that's what you do. I get it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
No, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. I get it. All right. What are songs you're chasing? Let's do Who first. Are there songs that are on your wish list that you've not heard live or only heard once that you want to hear again?
Okay, so I got very lucky. I've been very lucky in my life. I've seen Naked Eye numerous times.
Okay.
Which has been huge for me. When they were doing the Who Hits 50, I even got to hear a quick one while he's away.
Mm-hmm.
When the last go around, something happened and they dropped Eminence front for the night and added Slip Kid. And I never thought in a million years I would ever get Slip Kid. And it was at the last Who concert I saw.
Okay.
And in your mind, you always think the last Who concert you're going to see is the last Who concert you're going to see.
Yeah.
So, I would have to think on, I've never heard Pure and Easy live. I would like to hear that live.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Flipping it to Bruce. Anything you're chasing?
I haven't heard Lost in the Flood live.
Okay.
I haven't heard my favorite cover of his, Dream Baby Dream live.
It's on my list.
Yeah. And I mentioned this before, I don't know how he chooses his covers, but Dream Baby Dream is an amazing version.
That video, when that came out, and I often show people, I go, if you want to know what it's like watching Bruce on stage, if you want a sample, do 10th Avenue Freeze Out in the 99 live in New York, right? That epic, where he's telling the story and introducing the band. I said, if you want a sample of what kind of magic you're going to see on stage, watch that. If you want to see what it's like as an audience member, watch the Dream Baby Dream video.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love Patty's little section in there too.
Yeah.
I know some people don't. I love it.
I do too.
Yeah, it's great. Now I've been very lucky with the songs I've gotten for all those bands. So
yeah. Before we get to the Mary question, anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
I just want to mention that we just recently added a new co-host to the show.
Okay.
Beth. She's as you know, after doing these things for a while, it helps to get some kind of new energy in the room.
Yeah.
And she's definitely, new energy, and she's helping us out. And we're doing some John Entwistle reviews coming up.
All right. So if you are listening to this because you follow the Fisher Protocol, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you have enjoyed Ethan and I talking. I end every podcast with the Mary question. Jay Armstrong, writer of a new book, Bed Stories for the Living, is a retired honors English teacher from the Philadelphia area. When he was teaching, his honors English seniors would spend 2 days breaking apart Thunder Road. They would look at all the lyrics. They would talk about the imagery Bruce uses. They talk about the themes of the song. He would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And at the end of the 2 days, he asked his class, does Mary get in the car? Ethan Fisher, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
If this is supposed to be a yes or no question, it's not, because I never thought about it before.
Okay. Well, and actually, as I talked before, the worst answer is yes, she gets in the car.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you give me a little, so yes.
Yeah. So it's like, I never thought about it before.
Yes.
And I put in scenarios in my brain. This is how I think about music.
Yeah.
I thought about this question a lot since I first saw it.
Good.
So, I thought about what happens if she doesn't get in the car. Does he just swing around the corner and that's where he picks up Rosalita?
Yeah.
Or does he go off? I mean, because it follows his trajectory through his albums in my mind.
Right.
And at some point he ends up, working for the Johnstown Company, and things aren't happy. So the answer is yes, she gets in the car, because if she doesn't get in the car, I don't know what I can do with my life. My whole life is different if she doesn't get in that car. Now I really think about it.
Okay.
Birds don't sing, children aren't happy if she doesn't get in that car. She gets in the car. Maybe she's upset that you just told me that I live in a town full of losers.
Yes.
And maybe that causes friction down the road. But right now, she gets in the car.
I like that answer. I like that answer a lot, Ethan. All right. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way? And promote the YouTube channel for sure.
YouTube.com/C/Fisher Protocol, at Fisher Protocol on Twitter, which I get snarky. So, and at Fisher Protocol on Instagram, and fisherprotocol@gmail.com. But the best way is comments or, on the YouTube channel.
Good. Any final thoughts?
I had a really good time.
Yes, I will give you an open invite to join me anytime. Listeners, go get vaccinated, go get boosted. As we are recording this, think a good thought for Ukraine.
Friends in Ukraine, yeah.
That this is a scary time for all of us. So let's be good to each other, because really that's the only way we get through this. Ethan, thank you. Listeners, thank you. And we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Did you see that? His body hit the street with such a beautiful thud. I wonder what that kid was saying.